Good morning, everyone. I hope we're having a nice morning today. I'm going to get us started and hand it off to Angela in a couple of minutes, but I just wanted to go over a few things. I brought this quote back up. We shared this quote yesterday, and I was reflecting last night and just thinking, wow, we got a chance to practice this yesterday while watching the videos. We really took on a researcher stance and we're watching videos of students explaining their mathematical thinking. And so we really took on this role of becoming a student of our students. And so that was a pretty cool experience. I also hope that you're noticing how the CGI approach is connecting to our values and our essentials. I hope that you're seeing a lot of connections there. I also wanted to say that we really appreciate the noticings and wonderings that you shared at the end of the day yesterday. We will be addressing your feedback throughout the day. And I also want to draw your attention to this memory mat that we shared earlier. If you go to the front cover, there's a QR code on the bottom right corner, and that will take you to another page. And those are some frequently asked questions. And so it's a PDF file. And so some of your questions might get answered by looking at that PDF page. We will have lunch again at noon. We will have a 15-minute break in the morning. We know where the restrooms are. Please take care of your needs and use the parking lot on the sides of the walls if you have any questions that come up. All right, I will hand it off to Angela.
Good morning. You came back. That's always a good sign. Okay. Hi. It's still very early for me, and I looked at the World Series score very late last night, not at the very end. But I'm doing okay. I actually don't really care that much, but my city cares a lot what happened. So I thought I would say a little something. So, like Sonia said, we were really, we sat and read through your comments and questions at the end of the day. And I don't know how you also had brain power to type on your phone, all of those things. I mean, I was struck by the specificity of big ideas that you were really resonating with. Really taking in kind of what I think is the heart of CGI. How children are brilliant, how we just kind of have to move out of the way a little bit. And I really appreciate grappling with, but our systems and structures don't necessarily support that. And so you're asking us in the room and asking teachers to do something kind of big and different. And so how do we do that? So I appreciate that you're in that space, because I think that's why we had 2 days here. That's why we didn't just send you home at the end of one day, because the goal is to continue to build those ideas together and to think about all of the early math work that's happening, the structures that this team has put together, ongoing learning opportunities. So today is really about continuing to settle into those ideas and really thinking, you, right here in this room, what does this really mean for you and your work? What are some ideas that you feel like you could get started with? And how might we kind of just go out there and continue to get excited about kids and their great ideas and help teachers get excited about that? Today, we'll continue to build on yesterday's work. And I don't know, I'm very bad at these opening things in the morning. I'm like, just know that we're going to connect a lot of the pieces together, but I'm going to ask you to be doing a lot of those connections, right? I'm going to be asking you to be putting the pieces of the puzzle together. I'm going to start you off by having you, in just a moment, get up and find someone who's not at your table, someone that you didn't BFF with, right, and hang out all day with yesterday. And I'm going to ask you to just try to recall a moment for yourself yesterday when you were watching a video of a child's thinking and solving. And my prompt to you, as you kind of think through, oh, it was Adonis or, Evan or, the kid with the tissue or whatever, one of these these moments for you, I'm going to ask you to talk with the person that you're going to be meeting with and think about how did that experience of watching that video and discussing it together, how did that help you understand CGI or what CGI is? And if you're like, I still don't know, that's okay, right? I want you to be able to kind of talk to people around that. So if I get my slide up, you'll see just some images, try to remind you of some of the videos that we saw. If you could stand up, get your blood moving, go find a partner that's from a different table, and just remind each other of a video that you saw yesterday and think about how that helps you connect to CGI. start to wrap up your conversations? As you finish up, you can thank your partners and head back to your tables. All right, well, that's one way to get our energy going in the morning. Y'all kind of came alive talking about these great things that we're seeing in the videos. So you've probably noticed, you've experienced in this past day that we watch a lot of videos of one kid sitting there talking to us, right? I mean, those of you who design PD, who lead workshops, you're like, okay, what content do I use? You could really just sit there and press the play button over and right over lots and lots of videos. You have access to lots of videos in your books. But I wanted us to kind of think about the intentionality behind, right? We can just kind of press play, but kind of why are we pressing play? Why are we watching videos like this? And what do we think teachers might get out of experiences like you all had around something like this? So can people, I'm gonna ask Sonia and Jess and whoever my mic runners are, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you connected with when you kind of talked, like which video did you did you think about from yesterday, and kind of the bigger picture of like, what did that help you think about? Because it isn't just, oh, so-and-so did this with cubes or, whatever. This is what they said, but it's really how did, like, what did you connect with? How did that get you thinking about the work of teaching and the work of supporting mathematical learning? So can I hear a little bit of things that you were so excited to talk about with your partners?
My partner and I talked about Evan and how he had that very long, drawn-out, productive struggle with the problem. And we thought that was great that he was able to persevere and everything. But we've talked about how that looks in a classroom with many kids that are struggling learners with especially math. Mm-hmm. And when do you intervene and support them?
Mm-hmm. All right. I think a lot of people talked about Evan, right? And so this productive struggle, the perseverance, and it's one thing to see him one-on-one and to have that. And so I think a lot of us are like, okay, like I get that experience as a child, like I can imagine a number of students in my class having that. So now what are the implications for teaching? Like, what does this mean for me as a teacher? Can someone kind of think, like, what else did you talk about, right? Yes, that happened. Yes, we saw it in a video, but what is that going to spark in a discussion about what I think or do or don't do as a teacher, right? How does that get us to talk about teaching? So Sonia's coming over here, and then there will be one in the back as well.
So we were mentioning how many teachers are still just looking at the answer, not how they got there. And by looking at the videos, it makes you pause and go, that is important for us to think about how they got there, what was their thinking, and then you can dive in deeper with that child about their next steps.
Okay. All right, so there's a lot about the process, right? We can geek out about the details of kids and what they're doing and what they're saying so much. There's so much about the process of what children are thinking and doing and how they're solving. Awesome. How about in the back?
I thought it was, is it on?
It is on. I think you just have to be loud.
I thought it was important to notice that he made a point that he had never seen a problem like that before. And I think many times teachers are afraid to give a problem that they've never seen before, but he was able to use background knowledge from previous lessons to help him be challenged.
Yeah. So can we sit in that for just a moment, that like commonly my experience as a math student is that I get lots of problems that I know how to solve already, or that like I've seen before, right? Like I practice those. It's a little bit different what you're saying here, that Evan is like, he's been given a problem that stretches beyond that a little bit. And that poses a challenge, okay, I haven't seen that, so what do I know, right? And so putting students in that space, it's a little bit different than how a lot of our curricula are set up and laid out to tell us kind of, what kinds of things to pose to students. So I think that pushes our thinking a little bit about the kinds of tasks that we're asking children to engage with. And if we're always only looking for right answer, wrong answer, then we're going to feel like we failed, right? If we're posing these bigger problems that are a stretch. But if we're looking for, oh my goodness, even if Evan didn't finish, if he sat there and drew out 14 circles and said, okay, I know 10 are going to go in each one, but I'm a little stuck. Think about how productive even that would be for laying the groundwork, right? A lot of you talked about how much place value understanding, how much that work of building tens was kind of embedded in that problem and that evidence in his thinking. So I think teachers need to be given permission to know that even if a child doesn't finish, right, doesn't get the right answer, right, doesn't have a complete strategy to work from start to finish, if there's something mathematically productive happening for them in that moment, then that was important, that's what they experienced today. Like, that was a successful learning experience for them. I think that's a hard idea to wrap your head around, right? It's a little bit different. That's a shift from the kinds of structures we already have, the kinds of ways of participating in math that we already, commonly experience. All right. What else do people talk about? Yeah, up here. I think Sonia's coming with your mic.
So my partner and she pointed out in the first student with the groups and the cubes, how she put the one in the front.
Jada with her packages, the gum, that one,
Yeah, and just, she's just beginning the journey of like how to solve those types of problems. So by us coming in as a teacher and saying, oh, that's not how you do it, you don't put that cube there. In time, as she matures, she's gonna figure that out by watching other students. And, for teachers to come in and say, oh, that's not how you do it, can crush her confidence. Like, I solved that problem correctly, just not the way you wanted me to do it.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of time, I think this came up in a number of videos. Jada using her cubes as packages, right, and pieces of gum. Evan using a single cube for a 10. And then there was the little girl who compared two quantities and she stacked them, right? Did people talk about that one? So I mean, a common theme is that children are doing things with tools that are a little different than how we thought we might have done it, or that a textbook kind of told us to go do this. And we understand the intentions behind, oh, it's clear if you do it this way. But if we kind of step back and give kids space to bring their knowledge and their sense making to the situation, and actually if we kind of sit back, I think I heard this in a lot of your conversations, that you felt like you had to get out of the way a little bit, right? Just like you had to hold your tongue or sit on your hands just for a moment, which I know is not something that it's something that we have to consciously think about. But if we kind of allow kids to have that space, we get to see them, right, sharing some knowledge that was unexpected to us. And I think that's a powerful learning opportunity too. Right, we come into these moments with assumptions and expectations and kind of this is how I think it's supposed to go. But if we're kind of stepping back just a little bit and kind of getting out of kids' way, then we get to learn so much about their thinking. And oftentimes we get to be surprised by how much they know and how much, what they're really thinking about this. Okay, and that's not, that's not a trivial thing, right? That's an important experience that we're having. Do you have a mic? Yeah.
Yeah, and to not think oh, Jada's doing it this way, but she'll eventually learn a more sophisticated way, as though there's a right way with it. The highest level math class I ever took in college was a non-Euclidean geometry course, and I don't remember much from that class at all. But
no, we all know what non-Euclidean geometry is. Don't worry, we're good. Keep going.
Yeah. But what I do remember is that instead of point, line, and plane being undefined, we could define it ourselves and then manipulate within that system. So that's what mathematicians do, right? They can manipulate. They can say, I'm going to make this stand for this, and then go from there. So it's not that Jada was doing something that was early and later she's going to develop a more sophisticated procedure. She was doing what mathematicians do, and she was manipulating it. And when Evan made the ones into those into tens, right? Like in our heads we might be thinking, oh, wrong, and someday but no, he's doing what mathematicians do. He's making it work for him to understand and make sense of the world.
And I think what you're reminding me is that we can often think, okay, yes, kids are at this stage, but how do we quickly get them to another, right? And again, there's pacing pressures that push us in that direction. When we see different strategies, like we have up on these charts, lots of teachers think, okay, kids are here, how do I move them to the next, right? And there's this kind of pressure to make sure we're constantly moving kids. And I'm not saying that we don't build kids' understanding, right? We do want Jada to continue to build and grow her thinking. But I think what you're sharing with us is if we're always in this mode of, I see that happening now, like kind of how do I fix it, right? If we're kind of in that, then what we do is we don't honor exactly the thinking that's happening right now. It's like we don't give ourselves space to do that. And so if we, I guess, do the flip side, right? If we just say, how cool was it that Jada did that? How cool was it that Camilla and all of these other kids that we're seeing in these videos did the things that they do? How mathematically rich? And that's why we ask questions like, what does the child know, right? We take this asset-based approach. We really sit in this, what knowledge is being evidenced here? That's really gonna help us get so in tune to exactly kids thinking right now. And that's gonna help us make better decisions as we move forward with our teaching. So much of what we're seeing here is really honoring kids' thinking, right? Really honoring and validating the work that kids are bringing to the table right here, and being able to recognize and notice the details of all of those things that are happening. Not the, what is she not doing yet that I need to like hurry up and get to. But we do, right? We have those long-term goals in mind, right? I'm not saying that we don't, but we rush them. Over here, I think there is a hand.
So as I'm listening to this conversation and thinking about the kids, it's also making me think about the teachers and thinking about how do we create the space for the teachers to have the thinking, to persevere, to engage with that productive struggle, the learning experiences like we're seeing in the kids. And what are those, when teachers are trying these things out early on, what are those tiny little changes in practice that we can be paying attention to and supporting and creating, and so that we cultivate these experiences for teachers, much like we're hoping that the teachers cultivate them for the children.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, that's part of the work that we're going to be thinking about together today. Where can we find those professional learning spaces to, right, support teachers to be able to engage in these kinds of similar things as well? So your prompt at your tables now, right? You got to talk to someone away from your table. Now you're back at your tables. Someone put this in the Slido at the end of the day yesterday. What's a 1-minute elevator pitch about what CGI is? I'm going to make you talk about that at your tables. Okay, go for it. All right, I'm going to invite us back together in a moment. All right, let me have us come back together. So I love how some groups took this task literally, like they're writing like a 2-sentence. You can ask them to share it with you. I'm not going to have us share out right now, but I wanted you to get going and thinking about what your own definition of CGI is and how you might want to share it with others, because my hope is that you continue to build that for yourself and with each other throughout today. I've noticed that some people are opening their book and they're noticing there's QR codes, right? So all of the videos that I've been sharing with you will be linked to you in a slide deck that will be shared with you, but they're also available either here in your book resources or on, there's something called the DREAM Teacher Educator website, Development and Research and Early Math Education. That is another project. I work on like 9,000 different projects. So one of the other projects, literally, one of the other projects I work on. And so there's access to like JADA and some of the other videos that you'll see on that, open access, freely available. So we wanted to make sure that we engaged in material in these couple of days that you could use with teachers and others in your learning spaces. So we'll help you find access to all of those things as we move forward. So another kind of big idea that came up in your questions, either at your tables yesterday or in the ending reflection, was it's like something along the lines of, okay, how do we kind of find a brand new 1 hour of time every single day to do all of these things in addition to all of the other things that we got to do? Some version of that, right? And so how I interpret that kind of question is, I think, and this is exactly where kind of people are, right? As you start to learn about CGI and things like counting collections, right? All this other great work that you're seeing, people feel like that feels like a completely separate thing than our current math program. And so if I think of it as a completely separate thing than my current math program, then of course no one has a brand new hour in their day that they had, that, you know, that we can just do this. So I want to push on that idea a little bit and think about, it's not a completely separate thing. And if it's not, then what does that mean about how we're currently thinking about the math work that we already do in our classroom? So many of you were on our kickoff. I can't remember what all of the different things were. Something that I did with you all that was online. And we talked a little bit about, I want CGI to feel like it's actually connected to and building on already great work that you're already doing. And I think it already is. And so a lot of us see, right, story-based problems are a big piece of what CGI is about. It begins, like, there's such robust mathematical work that can happen if we just ask kids to share cookies with each other or to count, you know, packages of markers and things like that. And so, yes, absolutely, this is a really, really big piece of people's CGI practice, right? To connect to stories and contexts. Why? Because I can relate to them. I know something about them. I can tell you about sharing graham crackers with my sister. I have knowledge that I can bring to the situation, and I mean, it's meaningful to me, right? I'm interested, right? There's a lot that we can think about why we might ground our work in story-based problems. These exist in your curricula. I don't know every single curricula that you all are working with here in the state, but most of the ones that I've engaged with have a lot of story problems. Sometimes we skip them, a lot of times we skip them, but they're there, right? So one lens we might bring to all of this work is, okay, where can we find story problems, right? Where are they written for us already? So that's one thing about one piece of this, our CGI practice. We might want to tweak a name or, you know, do a little something, and I'm going to help do a little bit of that work with you. But that's one big piece of what I think teachers do to build their practice of listening to kids thinking. There's a lot of work that you all already do around interactive number sense routines, number corner, number talks, number strings. I don't know, there's so many different ways, right? Warm-ups, there's so many different ways people talk about things like this, choral counting. So within these spaces, I get to listen to kids, right? Kids get to generate ideas. They get to hear each other's ideas. I get to think probably one way and also a different way, right? Because somebody else shared something. And so this is another space that we think about, you know, an opportunity to listen to and build on kids' thinking. We've got counting collections work, right? We can think about, is that already built into some of your curricula? It actually is. It gets taken up by a lot of curricula. Or are there ways in which we might smartly make adaptations to our pacing and things like that to find space for a place where we're building rich mathematical understanding and rich written representation more, right? There's all, what I'm trying to kind of convey, I don't know if this slide really does that, is to say there's a lot of these spaces that exist in your already existing mathematics practice. My question is, how are we using these spaces and opening them up just a little bit more so that kids have an opportunity to share their thinking with us? Because we could do all of these things in ways where we do the thinking for kids and we tell them what to do. Or we could do all of these things in ways where we step back just a little bit and we give kids the chance to tell us what they're thinking and to make sense of what's happening. This is like, I don't know, I tried to pull together some images of things that we engaged with together yesterday, right? Photos, videos, student work, counting collections, right? Thinking about kids pair sharing, talking to each other. So how do all of these pieces fit together is a question that I want us to think a little bit about, right? How do they inform each other? How do they interact with each other? How does it feel like not an add-on, but a way for us to think about already kind of building from our already existing math practice and doing it in a way that opens up space for kids thinking. So I want you to have like all of these images of mine, right? Things that we talked about yesterday, a variety of structures that we might already have in our classroom. And here's the question that I want you to think about. This is one that I ask teachers regularly, right? This is a regular part of my practice in working with teachers. How am I opening up just a little bit more space for children's mathematical thinking? And how does this benefit students? And which ones? So can you talk to each other? If I posed a question like this to teachers I'm engaging with around CGI, how do you think they might respond? Like, what do you think this might get them to think about and talk about? So talk at your tables about that. I'm going to invite us to come back together. And we'll have some microphones ready in case folks want to share. Not in case. Folks are going to share, but. So I think I asked you kind of a hard question, but I'm gonna try to push us to respond to this together. So this opening question of, it's gone now, but how am I opening up space, right? Just a little bit more space. I'm not asking so people often wonder, like, what does a successful CGI teacher look like? I think that's tricky territory, because I don't think they look, not every teacher looks the same way, right? You and the person next to you. But what I think it looks like is teachers continually open up a little bit more space to listen to kids' thinking, right? And so if that's the case, what do you think this looks like, right? So I'm asking you a question that I tend to try to, I build into all of the ongoing work I have with teachers, which is to say, how are you opening up just a little, what does that little bit more space look like today? So can people respond to, I mean, either if you have experience or teachers that you supported, if you've tried this out yourself, what is that just a little bit more space? What could that look like? What do you think would come up around that? Go for it.
A number one thing I think is just pausing after you pose a problem and giving them time to think. And then the other thing is just providing all sorts of materials for them and letting them choose.
Okay. So that was, I mean, those were two big ideas, right? So the second was you got stuff, but they get choice. It isn't everyone has stuff and I tell you exactly what you have to do with which stuff at what point, but there's stuff that you get to choose from. And then the other one you said was just pausing. Is that what you said? Pose the problem and pause a little bit. Okay. Don't jump right in. Okay. So think about that. That opens up just a little bit more space for kids thinking. Okay. Keep going.
I think that the more teachers do it, the more they'll like it and they'll find the value and then they'll do more.
Okay, so they got to try it, then they might do more. But what's the it that they might try? I'm going to put you on the, I don't know, you can pass it too. I don't want to put you directly on the spot. But you said the more they try it, they'll like it. So what's a thing, an it that they might try? Does that make sense?
They might try listening to their students more and hearing how they're thinking and realizing, oh, these students are all thinking differently.
Okay.
And they're coming to the same solution, or it's valuable what they're thinking. It's valuable to my instruction to hear what they're saying.
Okay, got it, right? So the thing they might try is actually listening and hearing kids thinking and kids' different ideas. Awesome. What else is this other, like this little bit that we might open, a little bit more space? How might we do that?
One easy little thing that they could do is in a lot of the curricular resources, it'll say solve using blank strategy. So you could just say solve, period.
A little bit of whiteout, right? Like hide something on your PowerPoint slide, but instead of solve using the tape diagram or a bar model or this, and this, just solve? What do you think? Does that feel doable? In my work in LA, we just bring Post-its, right? And you just cut it, and you like put it on top, and then you stick the page under the doc reader, but you put a little Post-it on, like covering something. So there you go. What else? I think I have a lot of hands. Over here, Jess, and then in the back.
I think we need to give up some control.
That's hard.
It's real hard, yeah.
So give up some control, but can you say a little bit more? Like, does that just mean, all right, like, it's just crazy, or I don't know, help us elaborate that a little bit more.
I think it's more like guiding where you want them to go, but not telling them, if that makes sense.
Okay, got it.
Which is scary.
Got it, yeah. So the phrase cognitively guided instruction, if you really think about the meaning of those three words, we are guiding. So there's a little bit of a misconception. People think this is like free for all. You just like pose the problem willy-nilly, like let kids have access to all the tools, then you go like check your phone for 20 minutes and then come back. It's not that, right? You're constantly like circulating and monitoring and listening in and looking over shoulders and seeing and finding out about kids thinking, because their cognitive thinking is what's going to guide your instruction, right? So there is this guided part. The question is, what does that guiding actually mean?
We were talking about how just like letting kids talk to each other, right? Like starting there before. But then Eric also asked, like, from a secondary lens, he's like, okay, so do you just have like all 25 of your kids doing, like counting, collections at the same time or something? And they said, in my classroom, it looked more like I was having, small groups doing different things at different times because that was more manageable for me. And I taught in small group. I didn't try, we did number sensor teams as a whole classroom, but I didn't teach my curriculum whole group. I taught in small groups, and then everybody was doing meaningful activities around that in smaller groups because it was more manageable. So just thinking about that as a way to open space too.
Yeah, so we could do things with just small groups of kids, right? It doesn't have to be the entire class. And I think, I'm just really appreciating that. I'm hoping you're building a vision of people are trying lots of different things, and all of this is in service. I'm pointing at a slide that doesn't exist. All of this is in service of opening up just a little bit more space. So if it's easier for me to listen to kids when only a small group of them is in front of me, start there, right? I want teachers to feel like what their comfortable starting point is to shift their practice. I want them to get going, right? I don't want this to feel like, oh, I can't even imagine a classroom being like that. Thank you, but no thanks, right? If I'm not even willing to try, then I don't have access to being surprised by kids and hearing their thinking. But if that's where I'm comfortable, I want us to feel like we can support teachers where they're comfortable. My goal is that they're going to want to learn more, and they're going to want to keep talking about what they're hearing from kids. Okay, I think there were a couple more, and then, yeah, great.
Creating clear context, like on some of the number strings. It starts with a problem at the beginning, like, Sam scored 7 baskets in the game. If it continues that average, how many after this many games? But you can get caught up in just the numbers and writing up just the numbers for the next one, but keeping that context alive in the story to create that relevance and meaning.
Yeah, yeah. So even things that exist in our math curricula that don't have a context, just naked number sentences and equations and such, if we bring a context to them, that actually helps more kids engage with it, and that gives us a little bit something meatier to talk about. And so you can kind of leverage these contexts that you're layering onto things to support kids' thinking. Okay, so I'm hoping, I'm just kind of trying to push us to broaden ideas of what teachers' practice might look like as we start to just open up a little bit more space for kids' thinking. And as we continue to do that throughout today, I'm going to push us to continue to think about, why are we really doing this? Who is it really benefiting in our classrooms, and why? So that's something that we're going to get into. There was one participant who shared an idea here. I had a slide ready for it. Not this one, hold on, I'll get to it. Okay, it's a quick example of something that you all shared that I wanted to get to. So here's a story. Millie has $15. She spends $6 for lunch, then she spends $4 for a train ticket. How much money does Millie have left? Can you just tell someone at your table, how did you solve it, and then listen to how they solved it and see if you did the same thing? Okay. All right, I'm going to bring us back together. I know that was a very short think time. How many of you added the 6 and 4 first? How many of you took away the 6 first? Okay. Did you see we had both hands, right? Maybe a little bit more in one direction or the other. So there were different ways that you were thinking about the problem, kind of the order of things and what's happening, right? You use your knowledge, you solved it in particular ways. This is a whiteout thing. I lifted this from a curricular resource, and I whited out some stuff. So want me to show you what I whited out? Are you so I'm so excited about this one. Okay, talk to each other. If you're confused about what to put in which box on what line, you're not the only one here in the room. Okay. Can we guess what the textbook expects you to do? What do you think they think step 1 should be? Anyone want to you can shout out, I don't know. What do you think they want you to put at the very top? 15 at the top, do people see that? And the dotted line above the brackety thing? So 15 on the top of the brackety thing line. Remember, that's what you're gonna have to explain to kids. And then what's on the left box? A 6, and then what would you put in the right-hand box? Okay, do you get that? Okay, and then from there, what do you do in step 2? 9 at the top on the dotted line, and then put a 4, and then what would you put? 5. And so Millie has $5 left. We all thought that way, right? It's exactly what we're thinking. So I love kind of, and this is I don't know, I think this is a tiny bit of an extreme example, right? Most of them they'll say a little bit something on the top, but I love just the comparison of thinking about this is what's given and this is what we can do in a way that doesn't feel like we're changing a whole lot. But actually, we are changing a whole lot. What we're doing is we're stepping out of the way. We're not saying you had to think this one certain way. If you thought that way, great, right? For those of you who did 15 minus 6 first, that left-hand side would match your thinking a little bit more. You might still be annoyed at the bar model thing because you're not thinking about those representations, but that would match your thinking a little bit more. Those of you who did the 6 and the 4 together, there's like no space for your thinking in that representation. So I love kind of sharing examples like this, and this is just one, right? You might find one in your own curricular resources that you work with teachers, where it feels like all I gotta do is pull out my whiteout a little bit, right? The whatever technology version of that, and say, how can I use a task that's already in there, but open up a little bit more space for kids thinking? Okay. All right, can you just talk to each other for a moment? What are you taking away from I know I've just had you talk a lot and kind of think, but what's one thing that you're kind of chewing on a little bit more from this opening conversation this morning? So just reflect with each other for a moment. Okay. So I'm going to invite us to jump back into what I like to call geeking out about kids thinking together. And I'm going to do that with, there's a handout that you have on your table, so if you pass that around, that would be great. So for me, this is just like a graphic organizer to help, jot down some notes and think about ideas that would help us think about what are categories of strategies that kids might use for different kinds of problems. So you should recognize the problems on the left, right? I made you think about them a lot yesterday. And you have these different columns. There's direct modeling strategies, there's counting strategies, there's number fact strategies. And so what I want you to do is just create a little graphic organizer or note-taking tool for yourself that helps you remember what these strategies look like in the different boxes, right? For the different problems and for the different categories. So do you remember this one, this light blue one? This was the Paco cookies one. Which is what, the third row on your chart. So if you want to draw something like this, or I don't know, maybe you don't like my representation, you create your own, but I want you to create a direct modeling strategy in that box for yourself. Maybe you're drawing cookies, maybe they're chocolate chip. Maybe, I don't know, you were thinking about fingers or something like that, but something that represents every single object, because indirect modeling strategies, children represent every single object. And they literally do what the story is asking you to do, right? They directly model the action that's happening in the story. Does that make sense? All right, so go fill in some boxes. Mind you, we didn't cover all of these yesterday, so if you're like, oh, we didn't do that, feel free to skip. But just ones that stand out to you from yesterday, work with each other to go fill in some boxes. There's ideas up on those charts already that you can draw from, or you can quiz yourself and see if you can generate your own. Go fill some of this out with each other. So I want you to help each other. So make sure you're supporting each other and you can talk about them together. I'm going to give us just another, is a minute okay? I don't expect you to finish, and you're probably really annoyed that I'm not expecting you to finish right now. We're going to continue to build this together, but I just wanted you to get into, remind ourselves, remember what kids did yesterday, and think about which boxes those might fit into. They might go up by 3. All right, I gave you the cheat sheet version on the slide if you want to look up. So this isn't complete, but these were the ones that we saw videos of yesterday, right? I wanted to make sure that I documented ones that we engage with together. All right, so if you look at the left-hand column, does direct modeling make sense to you all? Like, do you feel like you understand what the CGI researchers meant when they said children use direct modeling strategies as a common early strategy? Like, it's a very literal, concrete, right? Everything's represented. I do exactly what the story says. If I have a lot of experience with that and I go, I don't really want to put all the cubes out anymore, right? I might say, oh, I can start with the 7, right? I can start with a number. I can start and I can use what I know about counting to do the rest. That doesn't mean I'm not counting in direct modeling, right? Like I got to count all my cubes still. So I think the language can be a little tricky, but I think of the counting strategies as more of like, I'm counting on from a number, right? I've now jumped, right? I don't need to represent all of those original 7 anymore, but I can jump. Or in the packages of gum, maybe I know I can skip count already. Maybe I can go 6, 12, 18. Or there's a purple version underneath. We didn't see Jada do that, but maybe I know 6 and 12, right? 6, 12, and then I count the rest by ones, right? We would still think, we're still leveraging our ideas about counting there. And then we saw some number fact strategies yesterday, and so those are on the right-hand column. Where really I'm just using, I have a little bit more, I'm using some mathematical relationships that I know. They'll also call those derived facts. So you'll see that language in your CGI book, in your children's mathematics book. So if I know like how to build a 10, and I really love 10 as a benchmark number, if I know 7 and 3 is 10, that's gonna get me pretty close. I know I need one more to get to 11. Or we saw Adonis use his knowledge of that double of 7 and 7 is 14 and then adjusted from there. There's the one in the cookies row, the 3rd row. I can't remember where we saw this. Maybe it was related to the number corner example, but maybe I can start at 13 and take away 3, and that gets me to 10. I can take away another 3, and that gets me to 7. Sorry if maybe someone shared that. I really don't remember where we talked about that from yesterday. All right, so my goal is for you to have this graphic organizer to help you think about categories of strategies you might see, right? So when the CGI researchers put all this work together, the original researchers just talked to lots and lots of kids, and they said, how would you solve this, right? Without instruction, how would you solve this? And they really documented the different kinds of ways that kids would solve strategies. And so they created what they see as a framework to helping us understand what categories of kids thinking might look like. It's on your CGI memory mat. people talk a lot about learning trajectories and learning progressions, right? You might hear those words in other contexts. I don't tend to use that here because I'm afraid that it conveys that it's always linear in one direction, right? And in a lot of the graphics that the team here will make, you'll see a squiggly line with an arrow. That's what teacher learning looks like. That's what kids learning looks like. That's what my day looks like. I don't know. Like, what I want us to think about is, I don't want us to feel like things happen in a ladder and we have to go from box to box to box, but I want this graphic organizer to help you say, oh, I can kind of, like, kids are gonna do all sorts of things. I can ground that in this language of that's this kind of a strategy. So it helps you think about mathematically what could build from there, or mathematically what came before this happening. That doesn't mean kids are gonna do that in that order. So that's one thing I want us to kind of keep in mind as you're continuing to see this. Okay, let's see a little bit more, because I want us to be able to fill out more boxes. This is Jada.
Do you know what guppies are?
They're little people, except they have a tail.
Yeah, like those little creatures, but they have little tails. So this one's about guppies. Tad had 15 guppies, and he wants to put 3 guppies in each jar. How many jars will Tad put guppies in?
I forgot what that one was about.
You want to hear it again? Tad had 15 guppies. He put 3 guppies in each jar. How many jars did Tad put guppies in? So what did you do there?
I took 3 I took 2 cubes, and then I got 1 from each group of guppies, and then I put them by each other to make them look like they're in a jar.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only 3.
Mm-hmm. So if Tad had 15 guppies and he put 3 guppies in each jar, how many jars did Tad put guppies in?
5.
Yeah?
He has 5 jars to put 3 guppies in each one.
Nice. Nice.
All right, talk to each other. What did you notice about Jada? All right. Okay, so did people notice how Jada first brought her cubes out? What did she brought out 15, but they actually looked a certain way. What did her 15 look like at the beginning? Yeah, were you thinking, I don't know, were you wondering if she was interpreting the question different, or, because 5 groups of 3, which is what, right, we're building, like that's what the story's asking, is actually equivalent to 3 groups of 5. I'm not quite sure Jada's thinking about all of that together. There's an opportunity for that to happen, but she's building her 15. And how does she know how to build 15? I can count by 5s. And so this came up in the back table. I'm going to have you think about it with each other for just a moment. People are wondering, what kinds of experiences do you think Jada had before this day? Talk to each other about that. Speculate. What kinds of experience do you think she might have had before this day? All right. So I did get to know Jada's teacher very well, and she and her other kindergarten teachers collaborated a lot. I don't know what happened every single day, but I know they loved counting collections. Could you imagine Jada having some experience counting lots of stuff before this, and counting things in ways that she wanted to count, and organizing them and grouping them? So I know they did a lot of counting collections, and they posed lots of story problems. I know they did that. What kinds of story problems do you think they might have posed? Like a lot of them. If you look at the charts that you have here, they didn't just hang out in join, change, join, result, unknown, and part, whole unknown, right? They didn't just live in 2 boxes of that chart. They did lots and lots of different kinds, and they did problems like these, right, where we're asking kids to group. And so in the back table, they're like, oh, in California in the curriculum, do they tell you to go pose multiplication problems to kindergartners? No, they don't do that. So this was a choice that the teachers made. Why? Because they knew kids could do something like this, and they knew that it would build understanding. So I'm curious, right, if you think about, right, just like the gum problem. I'm sorry, this is not a multiplication problem. This is the division problem. Of course, that's recorded and whatever, forever captured on the camera. I was thinking about the gum problem that we saw yesterday, right? She solved 3 packages of gum, right? That's a problem, a type of problem that teachers had asked her, right? She's solving problems where now you have a lot of things and you got to put them in groups. And so that's what she's solving here, and we're seeing her do that for us. Okay, so do you see where that is on your chart? Yeah, sorry, was there a hand that you wanted to share something? No, stretching. Okay, we're gonna watch, I'm gonna skip, oh, there is one, okay. Hold on, okay, go for it.
Like so many microphones. So at our table, we're talking about this linear idea, and we're seeing complexity from left to right, from direct modeling to counting to number fact strategies. We're struggling a little bit with articulating how that's not linear. Like how kids might be in different spaces, like one child, if we're thinking about one child.
Right, yeah, so do you get the question? Like I try to push this idea that we don't expect kids thinking and learning to go along one straight arrow line. But yes, these categories of strategies, as they're laid out, direct modeling strategies are more concrete than counting on strategies, right? There's a little bit of abstraction, and from counting on strategies. Like if I have a little bit more mathematical knowledge of number facts, right, tens and, right, I might use things that push beyond, right, jump a little bit more than just going up by ones, and that would bump me into the number fact strategies. So yes, the strategies build mathematically, right, from direct modeling, counting, number facts. There's other names for things for multi-digit stuff that we haven't even gotten to on this chart, but I'm trying to keep it simple here. But so yes, they build mathematically. The thing I want us to think about as we're supporting teachers is I should not expect that kids will go from one box to the next box to the next box in a linear order on any given day. Because kids are going to be making choices about why they try something. Kids will say, oh, you said good job when so-and-so did that strategy yesterday, so I did that today. Right? Or maybe I use a direct model. I'm really great with number fact strategies here, and then you give me a new kind of a problem that has a different structure, and I'm not quite sure, so I use a direct modeling strategy, or I use a counting strategy. Or I think the Adonis video is a really good example of, I think he tried a number fact strategy, and it was either I'm not quite sure if that got me there, or I'm just going to double check just to be super, super, whatever, diligent about this. So he's kind of making these choices, and that doesn't mean he's regressing in his thinking or getting better in his thinking, right? So my worry is that we use these categories to label kids and go, these are my direct modelers, right? It's just a different name for the low kids, right? Or in where I live in LA, they're color coded now, so whatever, green, blue, red. So, but right, we tend to layer on these, we use these structures to label and kind of box kids in and make decisions that aren't individualized to kids and that don't allow kids thinking to actually, right, drive the work that's happening. So I want this to help us think mathematically what's happening with kids' strategies, but not box us into a line. Sorry, Amy, I know your hand was like up and I just kind of kept talking.
You got to most of the things that I was going to say. I was just saying also, like when numbers get higher, kids might move around to different things. And like we have, like speaking of non-Euclidean geometry at MSU, this giant projected globe that like advanced math students go in and direct model problems I don't understand on. So like, I think Angela's point, I just wanted to reinforce this about the strategies being linear in terms of the mathematics, but not in terms of children is so critical. So these learning trajectories that put like ERs on the end, my direct modelers, my counters, like that's what we want to be moving away from. We're not naming children with these, we're naming mathematics.
Sorry, just really quickly, two things. Like I had to be a direct modeler when I was trying to help my kid divide fractions just recently, right? Like I didn't remember how to do that, so I direct modeled, right? I took myself back to direct modeling, but I was also thinking about Jada and how my knowledge of that as a division problem would have made me want to step in and remind her that it was groups of 3, not groups of 5, and that would have gotten in the way of her math. So I have to shut up and step back.
But I'm glad you didn't shut up right now and that you shared that with us. Again, right, another example of, oh, I really wanted to, with really good intention, because I know something about what's happening mathematically, I might have said, oh, can you push all your cubes together or something, right? And she'd be like, okay, and she would do it because we told her to, but she'd look at us like, why are you telling me to do that? Right, right, and it would be a little, or we might say, oh, this is groups of 3. Like if we could have, and you'll hear teachers do that. This is guppies, 3 are gonna go into a jar, right? Can I do the first jar for you? Or I don't know, right? We can think about all of these things that we do in scaffolding ways with really good intentions. And I think that's gonna happen, right? Because as we're trying these things out, you're gonna see that happening. And I don't want you to panic that happened. I don't want you to feel like you can never follow your instincts or try something out. People feel paralyzed a little bit. Am I allowed to say this? Is it okay if I ask that question, right? I've been told that you're never allowed to tell kids things, right? I don't want you to like put these blanket all or nothings, but I just want us to be reflective of, okay, that move I just made, did I miss a little bit of an opportunity to learn a little bit more about her thinking? maybe I did, maybe I didn't, and I don't know, but that's the kind of inquiry and reflection that I'm asking us to engage teachers with. Like, how did what I did sit back a little bit, and I think I learned a little bit more about her thinking, right? I opened up a little bit more space for her thinking. Those are the kinds of steps I want teachers to make and to be excited about that. That's a shift in practice that we're doing. Oh, okay. So you got Jada direct modeling this problem, right? We have it on the sheet. She's now going to do the cupcakes problem. So see where that is on your sheet. It's not going to be Mr. Gomez. I think it's going to be Ms. Morrissey, her teacher. Can you just anticipate a little bit what you think Jada might do for the cupcakes problem? Is it the same? Is it different? What do you think she might do? Ah, if she makes, that is interesting. She could do that. Yeah. Do you know what she does? I do. She doesn't do that. I can't remember. All right, let's watch Jada.
Okay, this one is about Ms. Morrissey. Okay? Ms. Morrissey had 20 cupcakes. She put the cupcakes into 4 boxes so that there were the same number of cupcakes in each box. How many cupcakes did Ms. Morrissey put in each box?
Eleven, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20.
Go ahead.
Forgot how many should go in each box.
Yeah. So let's read the story again. Ms. Morrissey had 20 cupcakes. She put the cupcakes into 4 boxes so that there were the same number of cupcakes in each box. How many cupcakes did Ms. Morrissey put in each box?
Each box would have 5 cupcakes.
Nice. Can you say a little bit about what you did to figure that out?
I did is I took 3 cupcakes to each pile, and then I took one at a time of 1 or 2 into one of the piles.
And how did you know when you were done? Like, how did you know when you had figured it out?
Because I did in this pile, it had 4, and then 1 more on top, and then the rest had it 5. So this one had 5 too.
Awesome. Got it. Very cool.
All right, talk to each other. What did Jada do? Okay. I'm going to have us talk, and we'll get to a break in just a couple of minutes. I realize it's 10 o'clock. So people noticed that she built her 20 in kind of an interesting way, right? She pulled out, what did you see her pull out first? Yeah, so people were curious, like, actually from the last video, I heard a speculation that, remember she made groups of 5 to make the 15? What if she did groups of 5 to make this 20? She would have had her answer, right, in there, just in laying that out. But that didn't happen, right? So she's kind of building her 20, and she has the 20. Then what does she do next after this like pile of 20? And I love how it's like you see the whole quantity, right? So in division problems, we start with this total amount. You really see that whole amount there, that 20. What does she do with the 20? Yeah, she starts to put 3, which is interesting. So lots of kids will not do what she did. They might put 1, 1, 1. Okay, I realize that we've boxed up all the tools from yesterday because we cleaned up. But like if you had them in front of you and you had 20 and you weren't sure what the answer was going to be, you might go 1 for you, 1 for you, 1 for you, 1 for you, right? People see that? It's like a dealing out. I call it the going to Vegas strategy, like that. And so you keep doing that until what? Like when do you stop? Until you're done. And as long as you've passed out the same, like you've done all the rounds, you actually are pretty sure that every group has the same amount, right? That's a really important piece of this problem. So Jada didn't start by 1s. She started by what? Yeah, so I don't know, people were talking a little bit about, like she likes to be a little bit more efficient. Like she knew it was gonna be more than 1 in each pile, more than 1 in each group. So maybe I can start with 3s, and then from there, I gotta like add some more. Sometimes I added 1 or 2. She's like so clear about what she does. And did you notice she had to double check? She had to count some of them again just to make sure that they all had 5. I'm curious if some of them she could just kind of subitize, right? Like she could look at it and know, oh, those have 5, and those, oh, I need to count that because it's arranged a little differently or something like that. But she's got to double check that they all have the same amount, and that's how she knows she's done. So this is still direct modeling, but do you feel how that this feels different than the guppies problem? Right? It's because the problem structure is a little bit different, even though they're both division. So we'll get into that a little bit more. We're going to quickly watch Fernie. I promise it'll be really fast, and then we'll head to a break. So Fernie's going to solve the guppies problem. Fernie's another kid in kindergarten. Oops. Sorry. I ordered my slide. Oh, there we go. Okay, ready for the next one? So Tad had 15 guppies. Do you know what guppies are? They're really little fish, like baby fish.
Oh, I have those.
You have those? Okay.
My
So
science
here we go.
people don't knock my
So
definition
Tad
of guppies.
had 15 guppies. He put 3 guppies in each jar. How many jars did Tad put guppies in?
Five.
5. Wow. How'd you figure that out?
I counted by 3s.
You counted by 3s. Can I hear you do the counting by 3s out loud?
3, 6, 9, 12, 15.
Wow. So how many jars did Tad put guppies in?
5.
All right. So how did Fernie solve? What did he say? Counted by 3s, and it was 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Did you think he might have been doing a little bit like maybe I know 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, you know, like maybe a little bit to prep that? And then how does he know the answer is 5? You got to keep track of the numbers, right? The number of skip counts that I've done, basically, right? So both of those things are happening. It's a little bit more mathematically complicated than what we're seeing happening. Could you imagine Jada getting there, actually, at some point? Yeah? Okay, awesome. All right, so you just got a tiny bit more that you could add to your graphic organizer around direct modeling, and this is a skip counting kind of a strategy that we would expect for this problem. You don't tend to get skip counting kinds of strategies with the cupcakes one. because I don't know what number to skip count by, right? You could get, I mean, they tend to be a little bit more trial and error. Like maybe I think it might be 3, so I might go 3. Oh, I didn't get there, so maybe I'll go bigger. So little, that might happen. But just so you know, you're not gonna get the same kind of strategy for the cupcake problem because of the problem structure, right? It's asking us something a little bit different. All right, let's take a break. Oh my goodness, it's like 10:07, exactly like it was yesterday. 15 minutes, you can do the math, and we'll come right back. All right, I'm going to invite us to come back to our tables. Did you get a round of golf in just now? No. Yep. We got Rusty off the putting green. We're back here now. We can go. Yeah. Oh, wow. That was faster than I thought it was going to be. Nicely done. All right. I'd love to introduce Amy Noel Parks, who is here in Michigan. Maybe I should have had Sonia introduce you, but she's a face that you're likely going to see. And so you've already heard some of her great comments throughout today. So I'm going to give her a chance to introduce herself and let her tell you where you might be seeing her in the future.
Okay. Hello. As she said, I am Amy Parks, and you heard me earlier because one of my favorite rants got triggered. And for those of you who've seen me before, you know when I get a favorite rant queued up, I can't walk away. For those of you who haven't met me, I've been working with this early math community for a long, long time. I'm a professor at Michigan State. And starting in January, I'm going to be taking on a new role in here, trying to study what y'all are doing. So not all of you will see me close up, but hopefully many of you will. I'll be in classrooms with my graduate students taking video of number corner lessons and regular math lessons and CGI lessons and non-CGI lessons. So we can tell like the great story of what's going on here. So I guess as you have opportunities to participate in research things, feel free to reach out to me to ask questions. You can also like contact Rusty or Sonia and they will pass things on to me. But hopefully this will be an exciting and not scary process for everyone. That's certainly my goal. All right.
Yeah. But can I just echo? Oh, yeah, you can clap for her. That's good. I just want to echo the not scary because I know that when people come in, you're like, oh my goodness, researchers, they have to write things down. They have cameras, right? No teacher is like, yes, come do that all the time. Maybe some teachers are, but I mean, I really just want you to know like the thoughtfulness of Amy and her team, that they really are, they're doing actually what we're all doing together is they really just want to listen to kids. And they want to see how the things that we're working on, how we're opening up just a little bit more space for kids thinking, not in an evaluative way, right? Not in the way that an administrator would come in with their check boxes and right? But they're really just so thoughtful and intentional and wanting to learn alongside the community. How do we make this all work, right? And how can we capture some stories of, oh my goodness, kids who never saw themselves as good at math before, suddenly they're the ones who are like, oh, why aren't you asking me to share my strategy, right? That's a story that we hear teachers share, and that's a transformational kind of story. So I mean, that's one example of what we might be looking for. And so just these things of, when teachers are excited and then when they want to try something out, when they're risk-taking, all of this is what Amy and her team are hoping to document.
Yeah, and Angela's reminding me that actually my introduction to CGI was 30 years ago when I was a third-year teacher, and I went through a 2-week training around this, and it entirely transformed my life. And I still have videos of me as a teacher when I was like the subject of that research project that occasionally I pull out and show. Like it's me, for those of you other old people, in front of an overhead projector doing this stuff. So I have a long history with this work, and it has been like so joyful and so transformative for me, and I hope it will be the same for so many of you and the teachers you work with.
All right. Yay. Okay, so that's Amy. If you want to see her, I think she has to leave before lunch. So if you want to go say hi or anything before she has to leave, that's okay. You can do that. I wanted to remind you about the FAQ that Sonia mentioned this morning. So on the slides, remember she had you pull out your laminated memory mat, and there's this little QR code in the corner. Some of you might have pulled it up on your phone and then thought, oh, the text is too small, I'm not going to read it right now. I just wanted you to know that we have put thought into creating what we see as a set of questions that commonly get asked about CGI, and that we can share some responses. We can have conversations with teachers with. So how might CGI classrooms look different from any classroom that teaches math through problem solving? We always do problem solving. Why is this different? So that's one question that gets taken up here. I've heard about problem types and like, what's the deal with all that, right? So that's another question. How does CGI help me meet the needs of all of my students? People thinking about like, what does this really mean for, again, the range of learners, the range of ideas that we might have in the classroom, and how we're really attending to kids' thinking and differentiating and individualizing things in ways that are really important. Is this only for younger kids, right? How does this work apply to older students? I know we've done a lot of focus. I don't know if you remember, I tried to push us into higher content yesterday, but I thought we maxed out. So for those of you who are still feeling like, okay, this doesn't feel relevant to 4th grade, 5th grade, you know, we're definitely gonna get into higher content. But I want you to know that the Research Foundation did start. It started with young kids because that's the way it helps us see it as adults. We've been trained to think certain ways. It's really hard to undo some of that training, but if we really just sit in what young kids intuitively do, that helps us completely reconceptualize what we think math teaching could be. And then the Research Foundation, so in your, I'm gonna hold your book up if you don't mind. In the blue book, it gets into all 4 operations and multi-digit numbers, but another book came out later that really dug into fractions and decimals work. So I promise we'll get into some of the content there. That is a really, really powerful entry point for teachers of upper grades and for beyond. Those of you who work K-12, no one says kids understand fractions amazingly, like we've done a good job and we don't have to touch it again. Everyone says, how do we do it better? Help me, how do I do that better? So that is a really, really powerful entry point. I mean, across the grades, it actually starts with preschoolers, but it gets really, really serious, right, in the upper grades. Let's see, how do I get started with CGI? How do I work on the skill of attending to the details of kids' thinking? Well, I need to learn a new curriculum program, right? So this isn't a program, right? The work of CGI is listening to kids. It really is. It's helping, it's deepening our knowledge of what we might hear. That's what we're doing together. That's why I'm having you pay attention so closely to one student. But as we learn that, we get to use our curricular materials in more intentional, adaptive, and we get to use them more smartly, right, in ways that really meet the needs of our students. So that's there for you to kind of think about, and it'll be linked in the slides, and you have it available in your QR codes. Okay, so back to these problems, right? So again, I talked a little bit about this on one of the earlier sessions. I just wanted to make sure we dove into exactly what we might name these problem types and how they're similar and how they're different. So both of these, right, we saw Jada and Fernie solve these problems. They all have these components. There's a total amount, there's a number of groups, and there's a number in each group. And so in both of these types of problems, that information is given to us, right? The total amount is given to us. But one's gonna be the same, and I mean, one's gonna be one thing for one problem and for the other. I'm not making sense in my words, but I think you might know what I mean. Can you talk to each other? Which one tells us the number of groups and which one doesn't, right? So talk to each other about what's different now across those two problems. All right. Did you talk about, is this where your group landed on? Did I put the icons right? I didn't mix up my slide here. So the CGI books will use a particular term for these two types of division problem. By the way, sometimes you sit down with fourth grade teachers and they go, what? There's two different kinds of division problem? Because in our curriculum, it like gives you a little bit of a, whatever, pictorial representation for one or both, and then it just immediately like tells you to go divide and use your multiplication facts to solve. So they really kind of gloss over that in our curricular resources. In the CGI world, they'll call it measurement division and partitive division. If those terms have no meaning to you or are hard to remember, don't worry about them. But what I want you to think about is how are children solving these if they're modeling the action in this story? So in measurement division, I'm gonna measure out equal groups, right? I'm gonna take out these equal groups. Why? Because I know how many are in each group. I knew there were 3 guppies in each group, so I'm gonna take out groups of 3. If there were, whatever, 12 guppies in each jar, I know that doesn't make sense with these numbers, I'm gonna take out groups of 12. I'm gonna measure those out. It's gonna be different from in my partitive division. Again, if that word partitive doesn't, I don't know, doesn't get inputted in your memory, don't worry about that at all. But this is one where I'm like equal sharing, right, into the groups. A lot of problems in this world are like, 4 children are sharing X number of things, how many does each child get? So that there's the same number in each group, or so that there's the same amount. There has to be other language in this problem that really specifies the same numbers and to go into each group. Why? Because we don't know the number in each group. That's what we're trying to solve for. In our measurement division problem, we don't have to say that because it's already implied that there's the same number in each group. We tell you how many are in each group. So, right, our curricular resources might mix these up really quickly because they don't expect that kids are going to attend to them. But if we really leverage, if we really think about the mathematical relationships a little bit different in each one. So I'm going to have us work on that idea right now because I think it's really important, especially in the upper grades, but I actually think it's really important across the grades. And so I have a little exercise for us to do that helps us think about these problems. You've been handed out a couple of different things. Now we're just filling up that folder. There's one that we're going to work on where we write some problems together. So that's what we're going to work on. The other one, this chart right here, this is an extension of your page 14 chart. But you see we've added another row here that helps you kind of see all of the problem types together. So I think that's a really helpful reference to have. But I'm going to have you focus on this handout right now, and we're going to do a little bit of work together. There's language here that also connects to the Common Core math standards language. So there are these glossaries in the Common Core math documents that show you all the different problem types and such. It comes from the same research foundation as the CGI work. They might name things a little bit different. So the goal of that top row, like, you know, you'll hear group size unknown problems, number of groups unknown problems, right? That's lifted from the Common Core documents. Okay, so the exercise I'm gonna have us do, we're all gonna fill out the top row together, is I'm gonna have us think about problems that we could write that use these numbers, and we're gonna choose a common context, but we're gonna kind of push ourselves to write a problem that matches each problem type, just to really solidify what makes it one kind of problem over another. So those are our numbers. You can write them on the little blanks. We're gonna think about 5 groups. There's 15 in each group, and the total is 75. Is that right? I was watching the Dodgers game last night when I was writing this, yeah, okay. So let's brainstorm some context that might be relatable to children. Can you talk to each other at that? Like thinking about these specific numbers, right, and that these are gonna be equal grouping kinds of problems. What's a context that we might use for these? Talk to each other. I'm hearing soccer, Pokemon cards, what else? Halloween candy, Girl Scout cookies. Okay, can someone give it a, so I'm gonna have you are just gonna choose at your table something that you all wanna write about, but can we just try it out a little bit? Can someone give me, what's a context that you're gonna be talking about at your table, or that you're already writing about at your table? What was it? Okay, so candy bags, okay. And then tell us a little bit, how does the 15 and the 75, the 15 and the 5 relate in those?
So it could be like we're filling little party favor bags to hand out, or it could be that we've got little mini bags of M&Ms. Either way, you have 5 bags of the candy, and each bag has 15 little pieces inside of it.
Okay, got it? Right, so there's got to be a grouping thing in your context. So here we're talking about candy bags, and then there's the items, the actual pieces of candy, the 15 pieces of candy in each bag, and then there's going to be 75 total pieces of candy. And so what this table is going to do is take that up and write a multiplication problem, a partitive division problem, and a measurement division problem for that context. Or a different one if you don't like that one. Okay, does that make sense? So do that with each other. So pick a context, work with each other, write a story for each box. So sometimes the division ones can be a little tricky. If you wrote the wrong one in the wrong box, just put an arrow to the other one. You don't have to rewrite it. You don't have to like get a whole new piece of paper. It's okay. Okay. Can I bring us back together? So remember back earlier when we were talking about Mr. Gomez putting 20 cupcakes into boxes, we talked about how wordy that word problem felt. It's because we had to use language that said there were the same number in each box. And so I'm curious if your partitive division problem has something that says something like that. So read through your partitive division problem. And does it say, puts them into 5 boxes or groups or bags, tables, I don't know, whatever your grouping item, 5 groups so that there's equal amounts, the same number in each group, the same number in each box. If we don't specify that the same amount has to go into each group, then I could do 1 for you, 10 for you, right? 1 for another box. But we gotta specify that. Okay. So we're all at different places at our tables. It's okay, you can keep talking, but just know here's your bonus if your table's done. You can choose a context and some numbers for the second row. And especially if you're like, these numbers don't make sense for teachers and kids that I work with, pick different numbers, right? Pick way bigger ones. You can pick a fractional number if you want to. But those of you you need something to do now, right? Here's your next thing that you can do. Do you mind sharing your thing? Okay. I'm going to invite us to come back together. So if you didn't get a chance to work on the second row, that's okay. But just know that I think this is a useful exercise to really think about how numbers and story context, right? What is really similar or different across different problem types. I don't expect teachers to write a brand new problem every single day, right? I think you would burn out pretty quickly. But my hope is that once we go through this exercise, we can bring new knowledge to seeing all the instructional materials that we have available to us. And we can say, okay, we're working, this is a division unit, we're working on this, bam, bam, ooh, those are 3 good problems, that one is totally different. Like, why am I mixing that in here? So let me do that later, right? Or let me reorder things. So I want our knowledge of the different kinds of problems to influence, to invite us to think about what's really gonna be helpful for kids right now. Or if suddenly kids are stuck, teachers say, well, they didn't listen yesterday and that's why they're stuck today. Well, maybe the problem is just really different, right? And if we didn't pay attention to that, we're making an assumption about what's happening. I'm going to invite my friend over here, Carrie, to share a little bit about how she's supported teachers around problem types.
So she happened to walk by and see this on my iPad. That's the only reason that I'm sharing right now. But anyway, I am happy to share. But anyway, so I was working with teachers in this context in my district, and I ended up just writing problem types, like a whole page of problem types. So I have one page that's all partitive, quotative. There's probably 15 different just little boxes with problem types. And so they would take the whole page and just make 25 copies of it, and they would just cut one problem off and then pass that problem out, whether it's a small group or the whole class. The kids would just glue it into their math notebook, and then they would go to what they were doing. I didn't put numbers in, so when I wrote the problems, I just wrote blanks so that they could shift the numbers based on what it is that the students were working on, or maybe I'm going to pull a small group later and redo that problem and use different number types. So I started putting numbers in, and then that became a lot of work, so the blanks worked a whole lot better. So that's what Robin suggested, that they could print them onto labels. Yeah, so that's another.
So I just wanted, and maybe there are other great ideas that you have, but I wanted to kind of have people share, these are ways that maybe we have grade level planning meetings and we can sit and write a batch of problems and have those available for us, and we adapt them, we leave blanks in so that different teachers can write different numbers. But I think I wanted people to get a sense of how you feel like you can be a support for teachers in trying something out. And so again, I don't want you to feel like you have to do all of this, but if you do just a little bit of this work alongside teachers, right, that might be a way that they feel like I'm being supported to try something new, try something a little bit different, and shift my practice. And I think the conversation that came up was sometimes it was really hard to figure out which ones are partitive and which ones were not partitive, right? Which ones are measurement, and that's okay, right? Maybe we just have a whole page of division problems that we're drawing from. So let's look at a little bit more student work here. Can you talk to each other about what you see? What are all the details of what you notice? And what do you think the problem or the story or the context might be? So just speculate. All right, people are noticing lots of different colors. They're noticing these 10s inside of the boxes. People are noticing the 10, 20, 30, 40 underneath. So I love showing this because I kind of want to ask, what do you think the problem is? And I think we could answer any of the ones that we have on our page, don't you think? Right, because we have 4 equal groups, there's 10 in each group, and there's a total of 40. So it could be a multiplication problem, it could be a measurement division problem, it could be a partitive division problem. This could be a counting collection, right? Counting collections could look like this. I had lots of different colored things and I organized them in groups of 10s. And here you go, here's my recording for that. So I love showing something like this because I think it helps us connect the dots between so many different kinds of things that we might do in our classroom. Counting collections doesn't have to feel like a completely separate thing that never interacts or influences other things that are happening. Multiplication and division doesn't have to be only a thing that happens within a certain unit, but these ideas really can kind of mix together. So here's some other student work related to the same problem, and there's the actual problem type. So go ahead, or the problem that was written. So go ahead and read through it. It was Halloween, very apropos for today. I don't know why it magically happened. And just talk to each other a little bit about what's similar across these representations, but there are these details across what's different about what kids picked up on, what they're trying to communicate with us in their representation. Okay, talk to each other. Okay. Who can tell what brand of bags those are in the bottom right? And those are hands, not clouds. In the bottom left. Ghosts, they were ghosts. They're hands. Why are there hands in this? Because she's putting them in each bag. Remember how we talked about action earlier, right? Yesterday? Especially if we're inviting young kids, I like to think about how are we inserting action into these grouping kinds of problems. So if we said there are 10 candies in each bag, that would be absolutely fine for this story problem. It would be the same mathematical work. But if I say she put 10 in each bag, like I think about how that invites kids to do a similar action with their tools or with their representation. And I love when kids bring that into their representation. I don't have it here, but kids will draw an arrow, like a big curvy arrow into the bag, right? A big curvy, why? Because they're trying to show movement, they're trying to show action. And that's really, really helpful for us mathematically to think about those as action. So grouping problems don't necessarily have action built into them, but I'm curious when we, if we can adapt a problem that we find in our curriculum, or if we can write one, can we just put a little bit of action? Maybe we don't have time to go type up something different, right? Totally realistic, but maybe we can talk about that, right? As we're unpacking the problem, as we spend an extra 30 seconds with kids and say, okay, can you imagine what it looks like to put those candies in the bags? And so maybe that action can be really helpful for kids.
Can you explain the thinking in the lower left where you have the 4 and the 10 pre-written in there for them?
Okay, do you see the 4 and the 10? So Carrie at the front table mentioned that she often writes the problems with blanks in them. And then some teachers, a way that they take that up in practice is that they pose the problem with the blank. They have it like kind of printed out on their page like that, or a label, and then they give number choices that kids can choose from. And so they'll write it like that, like there's a 4 and a 10, right? And so the 4 will go in the first box and the 10 will go in the second box. So maybe lower on this page, or maybe farther on the right. I don't know. I actually don't remember what the whole page looked like. Maybe there was another option of 4 bags and 25 in each bag. Maybe there were 8 bags and 10 in each bag, something like that. So someone asked me yesterday about numberless word problems. Right, that's kind of a routine that's going circulating around the world. So not around the world, around our math world. So we can pose story problems without the numbers actually in them, which I know people worry about. Oh, okay, my kids, if we try to have a conversation about a story, what they're going to do is they're going to take the numbers and just try to remember what operation we did yesterday, and like quickly do that, and they're not even going to listen or participate in a conversation. Why are they doing that? Because that's what we've trained them, gets you successful in math. But so one routine that people might use is putting blanks and not having the numbers there at all. So if you imagine this problem, Miss C made some Halloween treat bags, she put some candies in each bag, how many candies does she use? We could have a conversation about that, and there's nothing for you to solve yet. Right? We can kind of talk and kind of play out the story. For me, one thing that gets a little tricky about that is if I had complete blanks, it's kind of hard. Like, are we talking about 4 bags? Are we talking about 1,000 bags? I don't know. Like, sometimes I need some kind of a number to kind of anchor me into what I'm doing. So one thing that I do sometimes is I'll hide one number, but not the other one, right? So we're making 4 treat bags. How many candies do you think, right? Might we put 10? Might we put 100? I don't know, in each bag. Another thing that people thinking about upper grade students, again, ones who are going to try to solve the problem really quickly, right, without kind of engaging with you. One thing I think about is, can we just pose the problem and give them the answer right away? Just kind of take that off the table. And then say, so what are a couple of different ways we might get to that answer? Go work on that now by yourself or with a partner or something. I'm not saying to do all, I'm not trying to give you like tricks or whatever to do, but I'm just kind of learning from, as teachers are taking these ideas up, and the thing that they're doing is they're having to communicate to students that doing math here is going to feel a little bit different than doing math in your prior classrooms, right? Especially as we're talking about older students, because they've had more of the formal years of training into a certain way of doing math. And so I think teachers try to get creative about what things can I do that are going to take something off the table, put something on the table here, but really focus the conversation on the thinking and the conversation. Okay, one more story problem here related to this. Clearly, a teacher did not write this. She got it from her textbook. A pillow factory had just produced how many? 1,536 pillows that need to be delivered to local stores. If one delivery truck can hold 125 pillows, how many trucks will be needed to make sure that all of the pillows are delivered? So the answer is a lot. But I want you to just take a moment. I'm going to show you some student work around it. So if these numbers are way bigger than ones that you deal with in every day of your life, don't worry, we're going to support you into that. I want you to know that what the teacher did was she took this problem directly from her curricular resources. She did change one of the numbers. Which number do you think she changed? Yeah, that number was some ugly 3-digit number that was not friendly at all. Why? Because, right, the curricular resource wanted you to long division it. What she's thinking about, though, is what's a number that I can use that's going to help children use what they know, leverage their number sense, all the counting work that's happening, counting collections work. So I want you to see and talk to each other. How do you think Alan solved? What do you think he wrote first? What do you think he wrote next? What do you think all the different numbers mean? Talk to each other about that. All right, I'm going to show you a couple of other ways that Alan decided to write it on his paper. I don't know why he did 3 different things. I don't know if that's what the teacher always asks of them. Probably, maybe that she says, if you finish one way, you can try another. I think he was maybe inspired by what he did first to try a couple of other things. So you can talk to each other about what you're seeing now. All right. So can we talk about this one together a little bit? I'm curious if you can tell where the pillows are and where the trucks are. So in his first strategy, how does Alan denote the trucks? The little number on the top, right? So he's labeling each of those as a truck. And then there's this plus 36. Do you see that in the first strategy? And a 13 on top of that. What does that mean? Back to the story. Those are, yeah, so we have these extra pillows. We have to make sure all of them are delivered. Do you notice how that's a little bit, actually now that I think about that, I think the teacher probably added that, or at least the highlights, or not highlight, the capitalization to make sure all of the pillows are delivered. Because if that was not emphasized, what might my answer be to this problem? Not just 12. 12 or 36, right? Isn't that what you would expect kids to write? Or other versions of how do you deal with a remainder. So in this context, it's really important to think about that extra truck, right? We have this 13th truck there. That's not fully packed, right? But that's an important piece of this. I don't know if you've noticed, but yesterday and today, one thing I've been trying to do is when we're explaining like our thinking, when we're explaining kind of our computations or our work, I tend to try to say, how does that relate back to the story, right? How does the 13 or the 36, how does that relate back to pillows and trucks? Because I think connecting the contextual stuff to your computations and calculations and your work and your number facts and stuff, that's a really important piece of this. And as a student, I might not, it's like if I'm doing all this work, I'm like abstracting out of the context and doing this calculating kind of work, right? Computational kind of work. But if I'm not asked to step back into the context, sometimes I lose my way a little bit, right? I'm not quite sure what to do with that 36 or the 13, or maybe as other kids are engaging with my strategy, it's not super clear. So this recontextualizing, I think, is a really important thing that we can do. And as teachers, we can ask those questions that connect us back to the context. So mathematical practice 2 in the Common Core standards is make sense of, no, that's one. Reason abstractly and quantitatively, okay? So there's like a sentence in that one that has like 53 words or some crazy amount of words. If you actually read it, it really talks about what we're asking kids to do is decontextualize and recontextualize. Like that kind of the back and forth of that is really important for supporting reasoning abstractly and quantitatively. We often just go from context to abstract and kind of keep going the abstract. But I think that practice pushes us to make sure we're recontextualizing, right? Putting context in where we might not be talking about context. That's really going to help us understand why it's a 13 and not a 12 and what's happening here. Did people talk about, like, why do you think Alan is doing a ×4 over here? Like, do you think he thought that early on, or, you know, where do you think that ×4 came from? Yeah, go ahead. The 25s, yeah.
4 times 25 gives you 100, the 100. So 125 times 4 gives you 500.
Yeah. So with this particular number choice around the 125s, 4 groups of that is going to give me this really nice round number of 500. I'm wondering if you think Alan knew that before going into this, or if you think he figured that out along the way. So we're thinking he might have noticed. Go ahead.
Just, I think he noticed it when he was doing it the first way, right? So like 4 trucks, oh, there's 500. Oh, after 8 trucks, it's 1,000.
Yeah. So I don't know, right? Like I can't like look into Alan's brain, but my sense is that like doing this work of counting out incrementing all of those 125s really lays this groundwork for saying, oh my goodness, I see that when I hit the 500, that was 4 trucks. That's really nice. I can work with that. Or if you see how it's organized, do you see how the top row ends at 10 groups? I don't know if that was intentional or if that's where he ran out of space. It could have been either one of those. But what I see though is 10 groups of 125 is 1,250. Maybe kids already know that, right? Like you append the 0, right, when you're at, multiplying by 10. But I love thinking about what Alan is learning from one strategy he's trying out to another one, and how we often think about, student work as it's like a I don't know, it's like the end product or a performance, like that's kind of them showing us what they know, but I think he's actually generating learning as he's engaging and kind of working through this. Other things that people talked about with Alan's work? Okay, I'm trying to read the silence in the room. I think I'm going to invite you to talk to each other. Andrew, if you don't mind refreshing the slides, I think I reordered back to, I'm going to go back to, nope, not that one. I'm going to go back to the slide that we had earlier. So now we've kind of backtracked, big picturing it a little bit. We've worked through many more examples, different problem types, more strategies, more student work, bigger numbers. And I'm curious, let's see if it works, how all of these pieces fit together. So in just a moment, I'm going to invite you to go back to, there we go. I'm going to invite you to stand up and talk to someone not at your table. So you get to awkwardly find someone new again. And I'm going to ask, how do all of these pieces fit together? And pieces beyond what we have on the slide, but just all of these different components of things that we're talking about. How do they fit together? And how do we support teachers to think about how they fit together in ways where it doesn't feel like CGI, all these things is an add-on, complete add-on where I need to find a brand new hour to my day. So can you stand up, talk to each other, how do these pieces fit together? All right. You could thank your partners. You start to head back to your tables. Okay. All right, I invite you to, thank your partners, head back to your tables. All right, I'm trying to read the room. Are you feeling like better about your work? Are you feeling more challenged by it? I don't know, it could be a mixture of both. Yeah. I think CGI it's a big lift, right? It's a big lift because it really is different from the systems that exist in our current education system about what it means to invite children into classroom spaces, right? There's this model of kids don't know anything, so you just gotta fill their cute little brains up with all the cutesy things we can find on Teachers Pay Teachers and other stuff, right? And you gotta keep things fun and animated, right? So there's kind of that exists all around us. And what we're saying is, well, if you just go to the heart of why we're here, the heart of why we're here is for children. What can we do a little bit differently that really helps center their voices and their ideas? And I think that's easier said than done because likely if they've been in school before, they haven't felt like school is a place where they're supposed to share their ideas. Right? So we're asking them to participate in a different kind of an environment. We're inviting them into a set of cultural practices that might be different from ones that they've experienced before. So I think I heard this at some of the tables that, okay, I have a teacher who's really excited. She posed a problem and then kids just stared at her and they didn't say anything. So then she felt like, okay, CGI doesn't work because my kids don't know anything. Well, understandably so, right? The reason they didn't say anything is because they were taught that you don't say stuff until the teacher tells you what to say, right? Or whatever, some version of that. So we really have to think about what are these little things that we can do that shift children's perspectives of what it means to be in my classroom this year and what kinds of participation is valued. So before, right, you could only raise your hand if you had the right answer, or you would only get called on, right? And now it's actually everyone can raise their hand and share. Maybe you don't even do the raising hand thing, right? Maybe you have other hand signals or something. And so what we're doing is we're shifting what gets valued in a math classroom. So what happens is different kids get to see that they're mathematicians, right? That their ideas matter, their ways of participating matter, they belong in this math community. So someone had a question earlier about how are we supporting emergent language learners, right? That was a phrase that was in one of the questions. So I don't want it to feel like only the kids who have full explanations in English, right? With like great vocabulary or whatever, strong academic language. I don't want to feel like those are the only voices that are participating in math classrooms, but where it feels like any kid can show us what they did with their tools, or use informal language, or talk a little bit in English and talk a little bit in their other language, and maybe other kids can help translate a little bit. I want us to think about how we're inviting a range of voices and ways of participating in our classroom and broadening what it means to be someone who shares an idea, right? And to listen to other ideas in my classroom. So I'm going to get us into a little bit more content that's going to make us hungry because we're going to share cookies again. So 4 children are sharing, here's an example of where I put a little blank, right? 4 children are sharing blank cookies so that each child gets the same amount. How many cookies does each child get? So we're going to use this story context and put some different numbers in that box. And I want us to think about how does that invite us to solve the problem and to show what we know and to do a little bit more thinking and build our mathematical work. So we'll start with 12 in there. Do I have, okay, I do have on this line. So can you just, use some blank paper that you have or your little note-taking tool. Talk to people around you. Some people are really great on your tablets, whatever. 4 children are sharing 12 cookies so that each child gets the same amount. How many cookies does each child get? There's also still tools on your tables. Anything that you want to do to solve this problem. We'll just spend a quick moment on this. Love how some of you are unboxing those Unifix cubes. Absolutely. All right, does each child get at least 1 cookie? Yeah, how do you know each child gets at least 1 cookie? There's more cookies than children, so everyone's not gonna leave hungry. We're happy about that. So I appreciate, you're working through, do you notice I'm kind of working through this a little bit quickly, but you might be direct modeling. Some of you might have said, oh, I know each kid gets at least 2, right? You might have passed out 2 to start. Some people might know just 4 3s is a 12, right? I might know that fact, and that might help me get there. So there's different ways that we might be able to solve this problem. So how about this one? I've changed the numbers. We're moving on. So can I ask, are kids going to get more cookies in this situation or fewer cookies in this situation? Yeah, there's fewer cookies overall, right? So kids are not going to get as much as they got in the last situation. All right, talk to each other. All right, how many of you switched from using a Unifix cube to drawing now? I'm actually going to encourage everyone, even if you just have a tiny little piece of scratch paper, to do a little bit of drawing from now on. Okay, sorry. All right, I'm seeing people drawing people now. I love it. So people are being drawn. You might be, some people have an organization system of telling which piece goes to which kid. Like, are you numbering the kids or are you lettering the kids or putting names or faces? Okay. So I'm curious. Well, I'm going to do the next one, and then I'm going to get curious with you. All right, do you just want to say the answer before we move on? How many cookies does each child get? 1.5, 1.5. Any other ways people talked about it? I heard fourths. Ooh, some of the fourths got put together.
We said each kid gets 1 and the teacher gets 2.
That is a happy teacher. 2 left for the teacher. Okay. A whole cookie and a part of a cookie, or a piece of a cookie, a big cookie and a little cookie. I don't know, right? There's different language that we might bring to that kids might bring to this. Okay, one more. Any guesses? I'm going to change the number now. So we're not going to share 6 cookies. Someone wants us to share 3 cookies. That's actually what I had planned. So I'm going to encourage everyone to draw this one out. And I'm going to encourage you to draw it out. And maybe there's a couple of different ways you draw this out. Like, really try to push yourself to think, if I were a young kiddo, right, maybe even 3 big circles were given to me on a piece of paper, what might I do to figure out how many cookies each child get? All right, once you've worked through this, I'd love for you to try to name the pieces with the people next to you. Like, I know you know what the pieces are called, but what names do you think kids might give to the different parts that are being passed out? Okay. All right, can I invite us back together? Can people just shout out what a kid might name one of the pieces that you have on your paper? Ooh, do you hear that? Half of a half? It's actually really conceptually sound, right? I have half, and I took half of a half. Awesome. What else? Even the stuff that isn't mathematically precise yet. What might you hear? Just yell it out. So if there are halves and fourths, the halves might be called the big piece, and the fourths might be called the small piece. What else? 3 little pieces, right? You might know they're fourths, but they might be called 3 little pieces. Is that it? Is that what people, I think that's a nice range of things that people said. So I'm gonna share a little bit of student work. This was an item that was given to kids across an entire school, actually. So even the youngest kids in the school, 4 or 5 years old, were posed this problem. So that's how it was written. And the circles were actually printed on the page, right? So that you know that that's what was given. So this is which one? What strategy is this? This is the give the extra one to the teacher, right? Yeah. It's really common for kids to start to cut in half, right? I'm going to take, if I know there's not enough for each kid to get one whole cookie, I got to start cutting things. And it's really common to start cutting in half, right? Like I share things, right? We talk about half. So cut things into 2 pieces, and then it's common to cut in half, and then half again, and then half again, and then half again. So this repeated halving, so we get to halves, fourths, eighths, 16ths is commonly what's intuitive, right? Because I'm just going to cut things up. I know those numbers are not what commonly show up in fractions instruction. So I'm really kind of highlighting what's common for kids to do. So what did this kid do? Cut in half, and now we no longer have an extra, right? I'm dealing with that extra. But it's a little tricky. Like I know I need to keep cutting it up. It's a little tricky to know how to do that. Right? Am I drawing 4 lines? Is it really 5? You know, like what are they actually trying to do here? Like I want us to see the intention behind what the child is trying to do, right? Trying to make 4 pieces. I know in our minds that's not how you make equal pieces, but I want to honor exactly that the child is trying to make these 4 pieces in that last one. Now we have fancy children. Only 3 of them though. I don't know. I bet you the teacher was like, stop drawing. I don't know. Maybe not. But do you see what they're doing with that last one? So some people will call this like the shark teeth model of breaking up, because like they just know they need to keep breaking up into pieces, right? So it's like a little piece for you, a little piece for you. It's hard, you know. They're working their way into this world of what to do with that last one. It's really sophisticated though to know I can do something like, right? I can not just have a one whole, just like we have these one whole cubes, but I can start to break them up and distribute them out. So as we keep distributing, kids are going to draw lines and arrows all over the place. I don't want that to be, oh my gosh, it's so messy. I can't deal with this student work. I'm going to hear that. What I want us to know is, what is the intention behind this? The intention is that that piece went to this kid. I'm showing action. I'm showing movement. It's a static piece of paper, but I'm using these lines to show movement. And I really care about my friends, right? Like these are kids that I know.
I was just thinking with the shark teeth one, the one previously, if the teacher had actual cutout circles and let the kids like fold it up or even cut it apart, if that might be an element to kind of help scaffold.
I mean, do you see like, this question, I don't know what the teacher did, but I think what I want to highlight is this idea of, oh, kids want to break things up, but that kind of shark teeth way doesn't help me make these equal parts. What if I gave them a cutout piece of paper that they're now folding? That is an instructional move that's responsive to the child's thinking, right? Those are the kinds of things I want us to be on the lookout for. That idea came from, ooh, this is what I saw kids do. Here's an idea of what I might try to support their mathematical thinking. So it's grounded in what kids are thinking. If we didn't give kids the opportunity to show us what they were thinking, we might not have made that move.
So I noticed when looking at it, the person had circled 3 with the answer. And so a lot of teachers would just look at that and say, nope, they got it wrong because the answer is not 3. Because the question was, how much cookie will one get? And so again, kind of labeling, going back to what you're saying about smaller pieces or something like that, or the more mathematical terms, but looking at the process and not just the answer.
So this child really doubled down on 3 as my answer, right? It's in its own circle, and I wrote answer above it, right? It's super clear that that's what this child is saying. And so I love this, raising the idea that, is a teacher going to put this in the wrong pile versus the right pile? Like, is that how we're sorting student work? Or are we going to actually look at the process of what the student is doing here? Maybe we talk to them, right? And maybe we say, well, what do you mean by that 3? And so they might say that was 3. They might say 3/4. They might say 3/4. We actually don't know until we get into it. But you're right, if we just kind of leave things at face value, teachers will say, well, that's on the wrong pile. We see that 3 cookies again here. But we're getting a little bit more systematic. So this child, I'd imagine, has a lot of experience sharing things because they've developed this systematic way of labeling which piece goes to which kid without having to draw all of the arrows. We might start to see things being labeled in the bottom right, one half and a quarter. In here, right, we can see kids start to label things using the numeric representation. Maybe they know 3/4, maybe not yet, right? That's an opportunity for us to think. Here's an opportunity, by the way, to think about adding with unlike denominators that arose from a situation that isn't adding with, but that came from this problem where we're just sharing 3 cookies among 4 kids. So we might imagine doing a little bit of a compare contrast share, right? Getting a couple of these up, getting kids to talk across them. Okay. So can you just talk to someone next to you? What are your thoughts related to the sequence of problems that we did? Maybe you can think about what type of a problem we even asked. Talk to each other about what number choices I gave you and what you're noticing about kids thinking. So reflect a little bit about this. I've done it a little bit early yesterday. I forgot I had one more in case people wanted to see the last one. That has really cute kids. Sorry. I just wanted to make sure the next slide was there. So notice this kid wrote 3/4, and it makes sense, right? Related to, like, I see 3/4 being given to each child. It's a little bit different than 1/2 and 1/4 being given to each child. So we can say, did kids get the same, right? Is this the same answer as this one? Do you notice how the pieces are being passed out? If you actually look really closely, spiky hair kid gets 3 pieces from the same cookie. That's actually there's a little bit more anticipatory thinking. Okay, rectangle kid gets the last piece, right? Out of all, and then curly-headed kid got it from the right. So the child actually has to know something. This is more anticipatory. Like they know something a little bit more than just a piece for you, a piece for you, right? They actually knew that kids would get 3 of the 4 pieces, and so that's how they're labeling them. So the reason I wanted you to look at this range of student work beyond just solving it on your own is because I want to share the idea that even really young kids can start to get into fractions work. We're not telling them 1 fraction bar 4, right? That's not our starting point here. The same way that it's not our starting point with Jada to say 3 times 6, go work on the multiplication sign. Our starting point is, do you know what it's like to share something? Have you ever had to share something with a brother, right? Kids know a lot, right? We have a lot of, we have to share things in preschool, right? So many things happen where we're sharing things. So sharing is a really nice context that we can leverage that gets us into division, and that gets us into division that goes, everybody gets less than 1. This is kind of complicated, right? I don't know if I'd sit down any 4-year-old and say, go share 3 large cookies among 4 kids. But what if the 4 kids are sharing 1 cookie? Like, what might we do? So we can imagine ways that we get into this. So I wanted to share with you a video. Oops, this is Gustavo. Oh, sorry, hold on. Okay, equal sharing is a robust and accessible entry point to support students' conceptual understanding of fractions. I'll get right back to this in a moment. Gustavo is a preschooler who we're going to invite to do a little bit of sharing. Do you notice he's counted a collection? He's got a very interesting organization of his collection. He stacks them. And so we're coming into it where he's counting how many there are with us. This whole video is going to be in Spanish. So I don't expect everyone in the room to be fluent in Spanish. I expect you to be 95% fluent in Spanish. So the reason I'm actually going to push us to watch this video, even if you can't understand a single word, because I want us to think, how much can I figure out of what he's doing through his actions and through tools? Those of you who do speak Spanish, when we talk about it at tables, by all means, right? Tell people what you know, right? We're going to kind of leverage all the linguistic resources we have here in the room. But I don't want, like, I know I'm purposely putting you in a situation where you might not understand linguistically what's happening, but I want you to see mathematically, how can I see what's happening? Okay, here's Gustavo. He's gonna be working with teacher Karen.
¿Cuántos cubos hay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. ¿Cuántos hay? 18. Muy bien. Y si quieres compartir esos cubos con la maestra Karen, conmigo, ¿cuántos cubos vas a tener tú y cuántos cubos voy a tener yo? Si queremos tener la misma cantidad de cubos. Lo mismo. Un pastel, un caramelo. 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 Un Muy bien, y si son galletas, y si pretendamos que esas fueran galletas, ¿qué podemos hacer con esa última galleta? Hacer otra galleta. Hacer otra galleta. ¿Cuántas galletas recibiste tú? ¿O cuántos cubos? ¿Cuántos tienes tú? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. ¿Y yo? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. ¿Cuántos? 8, 7 y 8 y 2. Muy bien. ¿Y qué podemos hacer con este? Partirle a la mitad. Muy bien, Gustavo. Y si lo partimos a la mitad, ¿cuánto vas a tener tú y cuántos voy a tener yo entonces? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Muy bien. Si los partimos a la mitad, vamos a tener 9. 9. Muy bien.
All right, talk to each other about what you figured out happened with Gustavo and the cubes. All right. So for my non-Spanish speakers in the room, did you feel like you could tell what Gustavo was doing mathematically? So he was counting? Could people tell what he counted? And I know I'm not trying to quiz your language, right? But like, so he's counting, he actually counted 18, but there were 17 there. So that's right, because there's this one extra one. If we were 18, then we wouldn't have this situation of having to deal with the last one. So that's something that I think really stands out to me. So then then teacher Karen says, well, can you share them with me, right? So that we have the same amount. So what does he start to do with the sharing? One for you, one for me, one for you, one for me, right? And it's this really nice systematic way, although he goes, one for you, one for me, and then he like gives another one to himself, and then he gives it back to Karen. But like he keeps track of it. But for a moment it was like, hold on, is he like keeping track or not? But no, they'll change it up, right? It just got boring doing this. Like I'm gonna do a little different. And then after that, he now has this one extra cube, because there were only 17 there, right? 8 for you, 8 for me, and there's this one extra one. So my Spanish speakers in the room, teacher Karen says, let's pretend what? Let's pretend they're cookies. Why is that an important move right here? What if we pretended that these were cookies? I can share a cookie, I can break a cookie in half. A cube, right? Earlier they were talking about them as cubes, cubos, right? But so now if we pretend these are cookies, what can happen? Think about what now gets opened as an opportunity with that context, right? We talked about layering on a new context to things. So what gets opened up is now I can talk about sharing a cookie. I know the physical cubes, like people were talking about, oh, he just wanted to cut that thing in half, right? Like, can I like squish my hand into it as much as I can to make that happen? So it's a physical tool that doesn't allow for that as it's designed. But this context of sharing cookies, now I can cut it in half. So she says, what if we pretended they were cookies? What can we do? Do you want to yell out what he says? Yeah, he goes, hacer otra galleta. I know. Duh, let's make another cookie so that we can each have one, right? So that's what it's like the extra conversation, right? Like let's do something. And so I love it. That's his like initial move. Let's make another cookie. So she could have left it right there. Really, she could have left at any given point in here. But she's just a little curious, right? Like if I just go a little bit more, hold on, if we just had to share, what would happen? And she actually asks, how many do you have? How many do I have? And so he counts the 8, he counts the 8, and then he takes that last one, and can everyone do the gesture of what he did? Okay, so we communicate not just verbally, right? So there was a question about what are we thinking about supporting language, and so much of what we do in math classrooms are so language heavy. They're language heavy, but my hope is that we support all forms of language and communication into this language heavy environment so that I can communicate with a gesture like this. We all knew exactly what he meant when he said that. He does eventually use the word mitad, right, which means half in Spanish. He doesn't say it right away, but he does eventually. Karen's actually like, oh my goodness, I didn't know you knew that word, right? She's learning so much about him as he's saying this. But even if we didn't understand that word, we knew that he's gesturing, right? I can take this one cookie and give you half and give me half. So this is Gustavo. He's a preschooler. Karen asks him to count some stuff. He actually doesn't count them exactly correctly, but she decides to say, that's okay, right? What else can we do with these cookies, right? She doesn't let that be a limiting, oh, you need to work on your counting, right? That's where, right? It's okay, I learned that about your counting. What else can we do, right? And she just tries something new, and she gets to be surprised by his thinking, right? And we get to be surprised by his thinking.
Hold on, let me bring you that mic. He says, make another cookie, right? Then she goes back to and she asked him, well, how many do you get? How many do I get? Then he counted the 9, and then she went back and he held up that one cube again, and then she specifically asked him, so what do we do with that one cookie? That's when he finally went to cutting it in half, because she rephrased it with, okay, we have to do something with this particular cookie. And that's when he realized he had to cut it in half. So she kept kind of asking and probing him in that way to get him there.
Yep, awesome, right? So she has this mathematical goal in mind, right? It isn't completely narrow where she's only going to go a certain direction, but she does have this kind of, I could ask this and that could lead me into another mathematical direction, and that might be really important for us right now. So back to my slides. We're going to head into lunch in just a moment. Just wanted to kind of big picture things, right? What we've done now is we've used equal sharing as an accessible context into this world of fractions. And the word fractions is there, but for those of you who teach younger kids, right? the fraction notation, the symbolic numerical notation of fractions, isn't the starting point. And it's actually really important to think about that. And actually, even pictorial representations are not necessarily the starting point, because kids will think when they get asked what's a fourth, they'll draw like a triangle-ish pizza slice piece, and they'll say that's a fourth. And that's, yes, that looks like a fourth in a lot of circular representations, but technically that's only a fourth if that's 1/4 of a whole, right? Only in relation to the whole. So there's ideas about, kids develop such strong misconceptions about what fractions numbers are. So how many of you have seen 1/2 plus 1/4 equals 1/6? All over the place. Why? Because kids overgeneralize what they know about whole numbers, right? They know 2 plus 4 is 6, right? They know a lot about that, but they're not thinking of that fractions notation is now making us think about a numerator in relationship to a denominator, right? Like the amount that we have in relation to a number of parts. So numerically, what the research would suggest is we kind of hold off on that symbolic representation of fractions until we give kids ample opportunity to share a bunch of stuff and to cut circles and to share cookies and to share brownies and sandwiches, right? Things that are circular, things that are rectangular, to share things in lots of different ways, because what they're gonna do is really intuitive to them. They're gonna cut things in half. They're gonna cut things in half again. They're gonna cut things in half again. So things with halves, fourths, and eighths are really common. Thirds and fifths are weird, right? They seem easy to us because 3 comes after 2, 5 comes after 4, right? We think, but we don't tend to go there with our, right? Once I cut a cake, I'm not gonna now make it in a third, right? If I cut a cake in half, I'm not gonna go make it into thirds now, right? So we actually don't, that doesn't kind of follow our natural instincts around how we're dealing with fractions. So I'm getting us a little bit into this book chapter. Actually, after lunch, I'm hoping that I have time for us to read just a little bit from your choice, your menu of reading of choice. But this might be one place, especially if you're supporting upper L teachers, if you're really thinking about this. Even just the intro chapter is a nice overview of thinking about what does the CGI research show us about how kids develop understanding of fractions. And it really is quite different than how most curricula are sequenced and laid out. So this is a place that pushes teachers to rethink how they're going to sequence things. That doesn't mean they never do the same kinds of problems and tasks, but they might make very different choices about where they start and which kinds of problems they might pose to get kids talking and building conceptual understanding. And all of that is in service of them really building symbolic knowledge that is connected to this pictorial and conceptual knowledge. All right, well, I made us hungry enough with cookies, right? Is our lunch ready? Oh, they said it would be ready when all the things were opened. They set it up, okay. Well then maybe can you just, oh, it is ready. Yeah, are we good? Okay, I was hoping to be ready. Okay, so we'll have our lunch break for about an hour. We'll come back just after 1 p.m. and enjoy.